There's a lot of sacrifices that come with having a baby. Children are a major investment, financially, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. But children are always a huge blessing. In this episode, we're going to talk about some of the practical things we did to save money during the first year with our baby, and what it's looked like for us to trust God where He's leading. Welcome to the Olive Shoots Family Podcast, where we talk about family and parenting, homesteading, and the things God is leading us towards. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Brittany. We've been married for 3 years, have one little boy, and just got our first piece of land where we plan to build and start our homestead. We are passionate about the family unit and getting back to the basics of the way God created us to live. We have big dreams and are learning what it looks like to pursue those dreams while first trusting God's leading.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey.
I just remember thinking back to when we were first pregnant with Emerson and just starting to think about all the things, all the sacrifices that we were going to be making, and just all the different, just the ways that it was going to be an investment financially and physically and emotionally, and then spiritually, just talking about how we wanted to raise him to know Jesus. And just thinking about all that up front can kind of be overwhelming, but it's something that comes to mind, obviously. And just knowing that with any investment, there's a sacrifice up front, but there's going to be a reward in the future. And it's the same way with kids.
Yeah, just that thought of, like what you said, that it was really daunting to think about those things up front. And I think a lot of it is just because you don't have the experience of what it feels like or what it looks like. You don't have that knowledge of exactly what's to come and what it's going to take to make it happen. And specifically with kids, of you don't know what birth is going to be like until you've given birth before, or that you've walked with your wife through giving birth. And so you don't really know what that's going to look like until you get there. And so the weight of feeling what that's going to be and trying to prepare for it when you don't know what that looks like yet, it can feel a lot and it can weigh on you. And similar, those costs and those sacrifices associated with kids can feel, really heavy, because you don't really know just how big they are or what they're going to be until you get there.
Yeah, and I think that's true with whatever God is calling us towards, whether it be to start a family and have kids or add another kid or whatever, or whether that's something else he's calling, like a move or a job change or any of those things. You're going to automatically think about all the costs associated with what he's calling you towards, and it can be daunting. But knowing that when we trust and follow his leading, there is a reward, whether it's what we think it's going to be or whether it's something different. But just the cost up front, and just not overthinking the big things to the point of getting scared out of doing what God wants us to do. I think that's a big thing, because obviously it's wise to think about the financial investment and to think about how you want to create a culture in your home that points them to Jesus. And it's wise to think of all the things you're going to sacrifice and how you might have to spend your time differently. And if family dinners are important, how you're going to rework your schedule to make that a priority. It's wise to think about all those things. But when those things just outweigh and make us anxious and worried about how we're going to make it all work to the point of not doing what God's calling us to do, then we miss that blessing, because children are a blessing, and whatever God is leading you in ultimately is going to be a blessing. But if we try to control it all to the point of every little detail to where it just gets overwhelming that we don't want to take that step, then our perspective's not right.
Yeah. And I think it's important. We're talking about we're talking about this as something that God is calling you towards and leading you towards. And there are things that we want in our life, and there are goals that we have, and those are great things. But I think it becomes something entirely different when you feel God calling you to something else. And so, Britt and I have wanted kids before we ever even knew each other, before we started dating, and before we met. And it's been a want and almost kind of a goal in our life for a very long time. But it wasn't until we just felt like God was basically saying, like, now is the time. Like, now is when I want to lead you to this next stage of your life. And we felt it as more of a calling in our life rather than just this is a desire and a want that we have. And so it's from that perspective, if you feel that, or if, like us, if that's something that the Lord is calling you to, then it is that perspective shift where the cost of whatever he leads you towards, whether it's a job change, whether it's a new season of your life, whether it's starting a family, whether it's a new ministry that he's calling you towards at church, or a new service thing that he wants you to do, whatever that looks like, the cost associated with starting that or doing that thing is far outweighed by the blessing that's going to come through what he's calling you. And that's what Britt's getting at. And I think that's especially true when the costs are really high, because it becomes even harder to see how you're going to get through those sacrifices and how you're going to get through those things in the moment. But when God is leading us to something, and oftentimes he does that when we don't have all the answers ahead of time, and we don't know what exactly it's going to cost and what it's going to take for us to go where he's leading. When he leads us through those things, it is so clear to see on the other end that God is the one who provided. That when we walk into a season not knowing exactly how we're going to get there, and then we arrive, and then we look back, and it's like, oh, we got there because God was leading us along the way. Mm-hmm. And I think he does that because that is such a clear way for him to get the praise and the glory and the honor in our lives, that he gets the credit for all of it, and that it's through our story that he is worshiped. And it's something that we can then turn around and share with other people, that because God has worked in our lives this way, that he is given honor and glory, and we can, and other people can see and praise him and worship him because of what he's done through us. I think that's just the biblical story in general, that God works through people. But in our lives, when he leads us and calls us through sacrifices and cost into something greater, that he is magnified in it.
Yeah, I think we were created to need to depend and trust on God. Obviously, he wants us to have to depend on him and to trust in him. So if everything he called us to is super easy, then we would never need him. But yeah, I also think that there are some practical things that we can do to minimize some of those, particularly the financial cost of having kids. And that doesn't eliminate our need to trust in God leading us and providing for us, but it's just using wisdom to help with that transition and just to help minimize the cost. And so I think we're going to talk about just some of the ways that some of the practical things that we did to save money during that first year with Emerson, just to share some of that with y'all.
Yeah, because I think it was, for us, it was almost as if like we felt that calling that, okay, the Lord is leading us to start our family, to have kids. And we recognized that. And then we were stepping into that. We were going to trust him that he was going to provide for us and that he was going to trust us. But then it became a conversation of like, okay, we're going to trust him, but there are also some ways in which we should wisely, or decisions that we should wisely make so that we can follow in that, so that we can do what he's leading us to do.
Yeah, and just being wise stewards with what he has given us. Like, not just sitting down saying, it's all going to work out. We're just going to have kids and everything will be fine. But, I mean, you had a job. Like, we're earning money. Just how do we wisely steward that money in the best way and not just waste it or not just use it on things that we could use it differently.
Right.
To be able to bless other people with that money or to be able to use just in a different way.
Right. It was like if our money was really just given to us by God in the first place, which is what stewarding is, then what decisions and what changes do we need to make in order to best use what he has given us to follow in what he is leading us towards? We have some exciting news. It's been a long time coming, but we are finally launching our shop, Olive Shoots Makings.
During this launch, you'll be able to pre-order shirts for men, women, and children. We put a lot of time and effort into creating these designs and are looking forward to printing them for you.
To celebrate launch month, we wanted to gift you with a coupon to save 15% off your total order. Use the code FAMILYPODCAST, that's all one word, and check out our pre-order options on our website.
Thank you so much for your support in the next step of our small business. Yeah, and one of the first things we kind of talked about, just obviously one of the biggest expenses you think of when having a baby that they use over and over is diapers and wipes, and the expense of that. The expense of diapers that you just put on for a few hours and then throw away, and then put a new one on and throw it away until they're potty trained is just, you do that math real quickly, you're like, okay, that's a lot of money. And so one of the things the conversations we had at the beginning was considering cloth diapering, and Nathan was definitely more, I don't know, excited about it.
More on board at first.
Than I was, and it took me a little bit. But I think I was just scared of the whole process of it, and having to clean nasty diapers seemed overwhelming. But it's definitely, I mean, we use I think we have 14 Nora's Nursery pocket diapers, and we use those, and we still use disposables at times, but just we were wanting to start that at about like 3 months, because I wasn't wanting to do it at the very beginning. And just of our whole moving situation last year, we didn't end up actually starting him till he was about 9-10 months old. And I remember at that point doing the math, and I told Nathan, like, in 3 months we'll have already paid for these and we'll be saving money. Like, even though we didn't start till then, now we're to the point where we're already saving money because those were not overly expensive, and we wash them and reuse them over and over. And like I said, we still use disposables when we go out or overnight. But I think it's more daunting of a thought than it actually is to use. And it's definitely a big money saver.
Yeah. Yeah. And the first thought of like this, of cloth diapering is like, okay, what do you do with the waste? What do you do with the poop? And just, it's not as bad as you may think. It's not the same kind of cloth diapers that we think of from like 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, when they were just like washcloths, basically. Yeah.
It's very different. It resembles a disposable diaper. It works great, and honestly, they're really not that bad. And it's a way to save money for multiple kids. If you if you plan on having more than one child, or if you're not starting cloth diapering on your last child, then it's a great way to reuse diapers down the road with multiple kids, and it just compounds really quickly, like Britt said. So it takes a little bit more effort, I would say, than disposable diapers, just because there is an extra step or two between rinsing out the diaper and then washing it in the laundry, and that's a process in and of itself. But it is a way to just to help that financial cost of diapers, and
I would say for stay-at-home moms, it's more doable and easier. I know some people that definitely send their kids to daycare in them and everything's just fine, but I know that would also be a burden you're putting on somebody else. So
Right.
It might end up being something you just do at home, but even if you are only using them at home and you do work, like those, you're still probably using 3 to 4 diapers a day with that kid that you would be able to wash and not just have to throw away. So
Right.
I think it's still doable regardless of if you work or if you stay home with your kid.
Yeah.
And still saves money. Another thing that we were encouraged to do was just to buy items that can serve multiple purposes or be used for multiple stages. So, for example, like we said no bassinet, just because it's one of those things that's only used for a few months at the very beginning, and then they grow out of it, and it just, you pack it up, takes up space. They're not cheap, and it's not really a necessity. So yeah, we went with the pack and play just because that's something you need to travel with, and it can be used for multiple more years. And it can also serve as that bassinet at the very beginning.
Yeah, the one we specifically got had like a bassinet attachment to it and a changing table to it. So it helped in those first few months of being like his sleep station, his bassinet, but also it was right there. It was like his little changing table, and then we had it comes with like a little organizer for diapers and wipes and stuff like that. So it was like his little corner of the room, his little station, while he was staying with us in our room for the first 6 months or so.
Yeah. And then another thing we didn't do was just have a changing table that was only a changing table. We ended up getting a dresser, and then putting one of the little changing pads on top. Just because a changing table, again, is something that's not used for very long, and that dresser can be used, well into his childhood to store clothes and whatever. And so that was another thing that we just didn't find as a necessity.
Yeah. And if you have started looking at baby products and things like that, there are so many things that they just look really cool, they seem really cool, and you want to get them because they seem cool gadgets, but just taking a step back and looking at it from the perspective of, okay, what kind of use are we able to get out of this, and look at it from a long-term perspective. And when you do that, maybe some of the cooler items or gadgets or things that are in the baby product world, they might not have as long as a shelf life as you think at first.
Yeah.
And being able to just see, okay, is there another way that we can serve this purpose and have it last for 5 years instead of 1?
Yeah. And there's definitely a few items that we did get that were only used for a few months. And if you plan on having, we can't control everything, obviously, but if your goal or your plan is to have multiple kids, then that's the way. We justified some of our purchases with it's going to be used for multiple kids.
And there's some of those things that you just can't,
you can't
not, like a little infant bath or, things like that. It's only going to be used for a short period of time, but
it's very helpful to have.
Yes.
So, yeah. And then another thing that we definitely learned with Emerson and did not do well with Emerson, that we will have to do better the next time, was baby clothes, because they grow so much faster than you realize, and they don't need as many clothes as you think or as you want, more so. Like, they're so cute.
Yeah.
And just In reality, they just seem to be very comfortable and wear simple little sleepers pretty much their first several months of life. And you don't need a whole lot of them. And you don't need a whole bunch of cute outfits because you don't really go out to that many places that you're going to put them in a cute outfit. So it's just like, we definitely ended up with too many of each size because they go through it and they're in the next size before you know it.
Yeah.
And then something we did do, though, and that we enjoy doing is buying clothes secondhand. So buying them from consignment sales or just from thrift stores where they're already, like, people have already used them, and so they're way marked down. But, again, they don't get used for very long, so they're basically new, and you're paying way cheaper. So that's something that we have been doing that definitely saves money.
And we still get, a couple of nicer things or, outfits for like church or things like that.
Yeah, for sure.
That, that we still want to dress him up in. And we enjoy doing those things. It's really fun picking out little baby clothes and getting to see them. And so maybe one thing that you could do if you, are waiting on your first child, that you're pregnant and you're so excited and you go to a baby store and there's just tons of cute clothes, that it's not a bad thing to get those cute clothes. But instead of getting like 4 or 5 outfits in 0 to 3 months, maybe get one outfit in 0 to 3, one in 3 to 6, one in 6 to 12, and then one in 12 to 18. And so there's still that excitement of picking out those cute clothes for your little baby, but there's that excitement is extended as you get to like have the joy of, oh, he gets to wear this now, or oh, she can fit in this now, and it's so exciting that you still get the joy of buying and picking those things out, but it's extended long term.
Yeah, and those clothes compared to the newborn ones, those 12-month clothes look so big in the moment when you're picking them out, but then before you know it, like, that's what size they're wearing, and they still seem like your little baby, so everything's okay. But yeah, that's definitely something that like I said, we're gonna have to do better at next time because we've ended up with a lot.
And if we have a girl, God help me, that it's gonna be hard, but Britt's gonna keep me accountable to what we're saying on here.
Yeah, and then, well, more like, you didn't let me do it with Emerson, so. Is your baby or toddler teething? I'm always looking for natural products to give my baby instead of over-the-counter medicines that often contain artificial colors, flavors, added sweeteners, and other non-essential ingredients. Earthly's Teeth Tamer has been great. It's made from whole cloves and catnip, which works to reduce pain and swelling and provides a feeling of calmness and relaxation. My baby loves the taste of it, and I can tell it gives him relief. That's a win-win in my book. It's even effective for adults. It can help with pain from cavities, root canals, wisdom teeth removal, braces, and more. It's non-GMO, made in the USA, and made with 100% organic ingredients. If you're interested in Teeth Tamer, click the link in the show notes and check out the other amazing Earthly Wellness products while you're at it. Yeah, and then the last tip that we wanted to give y'all is just that we kind of did a little bit of was making your own baby food. And that's another time period that if you choose to use purees, it's a very short period. I mean, a few months, couple months. But we didn't buy, I think we bought prunes, and that was it, because I didn't want to figure out how to make blended up prunes.
Yeah.
But like, just being able to spend a few hours a day, prep several different fruits and vegetables, steam them, blend them up, and then we froze them. It was just super easy to pop them out, thaw them, and have different options, and just be able to take them somewhere, whatever. We didn't have to, during that time period, we didn't buy baby food. And then he quickly started eating solids, and just pretty much eats what we eat now, so. But
yeah, and now he still has we get like little pouches of like snack foods. So he eats those pouches when we're out, and he needs just something to supplement his meal, or needs something as a snack before we eat a meal. And so we are planning on buying some reusable pouches and making our own food there to save some money. And it's just, again, it's just, if you think about, okay, a little baby needs pureed food, or at least that's the route we went for Emerson. That our baby will need pureed food at the beginning of their life, and then later on in their life, it's helpful and handy to have snack foods that we can just pop in a backpack and then give them to them when we're out. So having the blender and everything like that to make the pureed food, and then the supplies to carry that with us, whether that be silicone trays to freeze it and to store it when they're younger and that's their meal, or to pop it in a pouch and have it later. And I will say, for the silicone trays, as a dad, that I went out and I worked, and then I would come back home, and so I would miss a lot of just the step-by-step practical feeding and things like that, and I was always a step behind Brittany, well, for multiple reasons, but I was a step behind Brittany because I just hadn't seen the process of feeding him and doing that sort of thing. But for me, being able to come home and I know that I could go to the freezer, grab 2 little cubes, and then heat them up, like that was a super easy way for me to participate in feeding our son healthy food that we knew he was eating, and it was in a way that he could eat it. And so that was just a really simple and easy way for me to be included in kind of a homemade food process as well.
Yeah. And like we've said, all these things are things that we did and that we found useful and money saving, but they're not all for everybody. And maybe you have multiple different things that you've thought of that we haven't even mentioned. I just think that the most important thing is that we are wise in how we spend money, especially if we're concerned that we're not going to be able to provide. And so those were just some of the things that we wanted to save money on, so that we honestly could use that money for something else. And it might not even be a necessity. It might be we're saving money here so that we can go on a little trip as a family. Like, it's not even just we're saving money so we can survive all the time, but just saving money to be able to spend it somewhere else. And just the thought, like we said before at the beginning of this, of just getting overwhelmed with everything that comes with having a kid, especially if it's your first one. We just wanted to say that if God is calling you into parenthood and you're faithful to trust him in that, then he's going to provide. And he's going to give you those ideas to help save money, and he's going to provide the energy you need when you feel like you got no sleep and can't make it through the day. And he's going to provide, the patience you need when your kid is getting on your last nerve and you don't feel like you can talk to them calmly, or whatever it is, in all the different stages. When we're faithful to trust in him, in that, the biggest blessing in our kids that he gave us, and just stewarding their life and raising them, he's going to provide when we're looking to him.
Yeah. Well, first off, I thought for sure you were going to say when your husband is getting on your last nerve, and he's going to provide a way to still love him through all of that. I think that's a big part of it too. Mm-hmm. But I think that if God is calling you towards parenting, and really just whatever he is calling you towards in general, but specifically if he's leading you towards parenting, that don't let those what ifs and uncertainties stop you from walking in what he is leading you towards. That by faithfully stepping out into what he is leading you towards, then he's going to take care of you. He's already there. He's already knows what's going to happen. He's already in it, and he's going to take care of his children, and he loves you.
Yeah, and I think when those big what ifs and those big concerns come up, and they will, and they still do. I mean, obviously we're only a year in, but like we're not all just confident and comfortable with where we're at all the time, right? So when those what ifs and those how are we gonna, like, this is the direction we're wanting to go in, how is our finances gonna match this, or just those types of questions come up, pray with your spouse and just take that time to take all those concerns and those what ifs to God, because he cares. And we've kind of talked about lately, it's kind of feels weird to pray and talk to God about money, just because we don't want to be like the heart of asking God for money from not the right place. But at the same time, money is how it's how we live in a lot of ways, and he wants to provide for that, and he does care. So it's not going to God and saying, God, we want the newest truck, and we want to be able to go on vacation every year, and we want like all these things that would be going to him with the wrong motive. But going to him of like, God, you blessed us with this kid, and we hope you bless us with more. So how can we steward what you give us, and how can we, what do you want us to step into to where we're able to provide for the kids that you're giving us? And not, God, we need more money, but you've given us this and we're trusting that you're going to provide it. But what is my step? What are you wanting me to do to earn that? Or not to earn him, but to earn the money, to earn that, to just receive what he is leading us into.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost as if this is the direction that you're leading us towards, that practically that's going to require this much money, or that's going to require this job or promotion, or it's going to require us living here, or whatever that practical thing is. And to say, Lord, we feel like you are calling us to this direction, and if you want us to go there, you're going to have to provide the way for us to get there, whether that be money, a house, or whatever that is. And then to say, if that's what we need, then Lord, we trust you to provide it for us. That it is in your hands to make that happen. And we believe you, and we trust you, and we have faith that however you want that to happen, that you will make it happen. And I think another part of that is, as you prayerfully do that with your spouse, and that you pray with your spouse, that it's also important to then have those wise conversations with your spouse of what that actually looks like, and to talk through that. And that as you are praying with one another, you then communicate with one another on, okay, how do we actually step in that? How do we actually follow through with what he's leading us towards? Well, we hope that was really helpful. We hope that you guys were able to maybe get some ideas off of what we did in our first year. We know that the financial burden of children is one that can cause tension, and it's just difficult to see how that sacrifice is going to turn into a blessing. But we just hope that these ideas maybe help you guys along the way to overcome that hurdle, and to just step into whatever God is leading you towards. Before we go, we just wanted to say and remind you guys that we launched Olive Shoot's Makings, and so our shop is live. We have a few shirts and sweatshirts up on our site, and we are super excited about that. So go check it out at oliveshoots.co/makings. And for you guys, we have a special code for 15% off. That is Family Podcast, all one word, and you can use that to get 15% off your entire order. So we just wanted to share that with our listeners in this first month of launching the shop. And then also to say that we are truly thankful for you guys, that this was something that we just felt the Lord leading us in and starting a podcast, and we just are super thankful that people are listening, that you are joining with us in this thing that God has put on our hearts. And so we want to hear from you guys as well, that you can follow us on social media, on YouTube or on Instagram, and please leave a comment and message us about what stood out, or even just some questions or some things like that you guys have had. And then if you would, please rate and review us on Apple Podcast or Spotify or whatever app you use to listen to podcasts, because it really is helpful for us, and it helps share what we're doing and spread it to a lot of people. So we just want to say thank you for that, and please, that would be one way you could help us out big time. We're thankful for you guys. We pray for y'all often, and we are just incredibly thankful for what the Lord is doing. So we'll see you guys next week. Bye.